everyone, welcome to the RotoGrinders Morning Grind Podcast. I'm your host, Stevietpfl. It is NFL time. It's week 9. It's Wednesday night. We record like normal here for Thursday's podcast, and only a 4-game NBA slate on Thursday, so we're skipping NBA, talking football. Derek, week 9 already here. How was your week 8? We usually talk pre-show about how our prior week went, but we were talking about something else. How did week 8 go for you?
Yeah, week 8 was brutal. I don't remember exactly why it was brutal, but ended up bubbling in my main team and then had a couple other teams that didn't cash. So didn't bring a single dollar back, which is not what you want any week of the NFL season.
You're ready for week 9. You're like, all right, back. Let's bring on week 9. So my main team didn't do well. It scored 139 points, and I got a lot of things right. We talked about Jameis Winston, and getting on that Jameis Winston Tillman stack was huge for me. But it wasn't huge for my main lineup. It was huge for a couple of my tournament teams where I only ended up losing a little bit. But really good NASCAR weekend. Took down multiple tournaments, so that was great. So they're just so much smaller now, right? The NASCAR tournaments, because football started, they're smaller, but probably wouldn't have taken them down if they were bigger, because I had some issues with the lineups, and so So
I remember I played Javonte over Bo Nix. That was my take of the week, and that did not age well.
Javonte
Williams.
Yeah, I played him a ton. He was one of the reasons that my main lineup didn't do well. He didn't have a good game.
And then Nix wasn't even that popular. I was banking on Nix being the bad chalk. But
yeah. And then I played a lot of Drake London, and he didn't have Kirk Cousins threw 3 or 4 touchdowns, and Drake London had 4 catches, so it was a really weird game. Tyreek had a decent game, but he didn't have a big game. And then it was just tight end central. Every tight end went off except for Bowers, and that sucked because I played Bowers. So
National Tight End Day, bro.
No, I get it. Yeah, I mean, it was. I played the national tight end. I played Bowers against the worst tight end defense. So, anyway, week 9, week 8's in the books. We go to week 9, and we got a lot to talk about. Like I said, 13 games, so 12 DK games. They did the old switch games for us, with the Sunday night football game. It was originally Jacksonville at Philadelphia, and they flipped it to Colts at Minnesota. So that's the Sunday night game now, and I'm kind of pumped about that. We'll talk about the FanDuel, with the Colts and the Vikings, but I'm pumped that we get Philadelphia and Jacksonville. We'll talk about that when we get there. But we started to really – what's that?
I'd rather have Flacco on the main slate.
Oh, I know. I get that, but man, Barkley against the Jacksonville run defense. Oh, yeah. We'll get there. We'll get there. Let's jump in. We got a lot to talk about, a lot to cover. First look, like always. Appreciate everyone hanging out with us. If you haven't already, subscribe to the RotoGrinders Morning Grind YouTube page. We get started with Miami at Buffalo, 49.5 total in this game. Buffalo, a 6-point favorite. It was good to see Tua back. I think we'll start with that. Tua being back was good for the Dolphins. He threw for 234. He looked good-ish. I think there was a little bit of rust there, but Achane, 9.7 yards per carry, 6 catches, best game that he's had since week 2 with Tua. That was huge because he was really cheap. He's cheap again. We'll talk about that. Mostert, had 2 rushing touchdowns, which is kind of be expected. He is the goal line back. What do we like here for Miami going into Buffalo?
I cannot believe they lost that game. They got up and then just went into shell mode. Weren't aggressive at all, especially in the fourth quarter. And that was pretty bad. So I like Achane a ton here. You mentioned he had a big game the last time Tua was in the lineup. Week 2, he also had a big game week 1. I think he's had at least 23 fantasy points in every game that Tua's played. And then you look at the splits for Tyreek Hill against Buffalo. They're terrible. I'm not sure what they do defensively against Tyreek, but since 2020, he's played Buffalo 7 times. He's only topped 15 fantasy points once, and he's been held under 10 fantasy points 4 times. So for whatever reason, they just can hold Tyreek in check. I know a lot of those games have been played in the snow, but yeah, that worries me a little bit with Tyreek. Love Achane. That's pretty much all I want to do on the Dolphins side.
I have a little bit of interest in Waddle. 5,500 is a really good price tag for a guy that's very capable of one big play to pay off 5,500. So I don't hate him, but yeah, I mean, Achane's my target here. Like, he's so involved in the passing game. With Tua at quarterback and how they can kind of use him in the backfield is huge. So I like Achane a lot. Definitely my favorite play for Miami. Like I said, I'll probably have a little bit of Waddle in my like 20 entry build. And then on the Buffalo side, I like Cook. I think Cook could have a really solid game here. I think his total is a little high, but I think like Josh Allen just kind of balls out in this game. That's where Buffalo gets going. I don't know if I necessarily want to pair him with anybody. I will say I don't have it up in front of me, but like Kincaid was really cheap last week on FanDuel. He's 62 this week. So, I like Allen. I'll probably play a little bit of Allen naked, maybe a little bit of Cook, but we have a lot of good running back options this week.
Yeah, I agree with you on Allen. I don't know who to pair him with. Amari just wasn't very good last week, dealing with a little bit of an injury. But week 2, Allen didn't need to do much, right? James Cook ran all over him. Prior to that, his last 5 meetings against the Dolphins, 29, 40, 40, 31, and 30 fantasy points. He just torches the Dolphins. So I don't mind playing some Allen solo. I was kind of worried about a timeshare with the running backs, but James Cook ended up getting 20 touches last week. Ray Davis only got 6. So until that changes, I think we can play some Cook as well.
Yeah, Allen just by himself seems really good here. So yeah. New Orleans at Carolina. 43 total in this game. New Orleans a 7-point favorite. I think all Saints fans are like super happy that Derek Carr is back at practice. It was limited on Wednesday, but what a different offense just in general with Carr at quarterback than anybody else they've kind of run out there. If Carr plays, Kamara is in an incredible spot. We've been targeting Carolina's run defense all year. They're allowing the most rushing yards per game. They're 29th in run EPA. They're 30th in Pro Football Focus's run defense. Like, Kamara should crush, and Kamara has, his expected fantasy points per game leads the NFL. So we're waiting for him to have that, 40-plus point game again, and I think Derek Carr being at quarterback helps. I'm not worried about the hand rib injury. I feel like it was just a veteran day off on Wednesday. He's one of the top running backs on the slate for me.
Yeah, I love Kamara. He's going to get a lot of dump offs. You mentioned the good matchup against the run defense. And this Carolina team, they just gave up a 30 spot to Bo Nix. So I think the pass offense is going to be pretty good too. This is going to be the first game that we've seen Chris Olave without Rashid Shaheed and Derek Carr under center.
True.
So I think Olave is a really good spot. Probably won't mess with any of the other wideouts, but Kamara and Olave, I think both very much in play.
Yeah, if I will say if Bub Means ends up sitting in this game, if he ends up sitting, it'd be interesting to see what type of ownership Tipton gets. I think he could potentially be playable with Carr at quarterback. And then if Juwan Johnson sits, maybe I'm taking a few shots on Taysom. Maybe they try to loosen the roll a little bit for Derek Carr and Taysom gets a little bit of upside, but I think everybody is more in play here with Derek Carr at quarterback. I love the Olave call. I wasn't processing Shaheed being out still. So I love that call. Glad you put that on my radar. I didn't even write him down when I was doing my initial research. So thank you. Because I would have felt silly for forgetting that one. Going to the Carolina side here. Andy Dalton, full practice on Wednesday. I assume that he's going to. Oh, no, they said Young is going to start. So Bryce Young starting. What are we doing here for Carolina? Thielen on the IR, the trade with Thompson. Deontay Johnson. Man, I am. What are we doing with Carolina here?
Yeah, so as gross as it sounds, I don't hate Bryce Young. New Orleans has been pretty bad. He looked okay last week in Denver. A little bit of rushing upside. I think he had 24 rushing yards. And he's 4,400. I haven't looked at the, overall slate. I don't know how tight pricing is when it comes to building lineups, but if you need somebody, 4,400 doesn't seem that bad. Liggett, I think, caught a touchdown last week. Coker's still only 3,600. So I'd probably rather go with the passing attack than the running attack. It does look like Jonathan Brooks practiced in full on Wednesday. We'll see if he ends up getting activated. If he does, it's pretty easy to avoid all the running backs. But, I'll probably have more Bryce Young in the field, which is never a good feeling.
Yeah, they've been very careful with Jonathan Brooks with the ACL comeback. So we'll see. They even said on Wednesday, even though he practiced full, they might be they're not committing to him playing or not yet. So we'll pay attention to that. I don't mind Hubbard if Brooks sits. I like Liggett at 5,300. Talked about him last week, and I said, like, hey, maybe you could play Thielen. We'll see if Thielen's back. He was really close to being back last week. If Thielen's back at 4,700, we know Bryce Young has a little bit of a relationship with Thielen. You could take that shot. I'm going to be playing enough Kamara that I'm going to want some Carolina runbacks, and I think the wide receivers. Don't hate the Bryce Young call. So cheap at 4,400 that, you just open up so much.
Just tell me not to play him,
Yeah, we have the same last name, so if it was a worse spot, maybe, but how bad is this defense? New Orleans defense has really struggled this year. 6th most passing yards per game. And they're just not getting any pressure on the quarterback. And that's kind of where Bryce Young struggles, is getting pressure. So Carolina last, by the way, in the NFL in pressure quarterback. So it should be a good spot for Derek Carr to come back. All right, we go to New England at Tennessee, 38 total in this one. Tennessee a 3-point favorite. Anything here on the Patriots? Drake May in concussion protocol. If he's out, Brissett should start. Anything jumping off the page to you here for New England?
It's 2024, and we're going to get Jacoby Brissett versus Mason Rudolph. This is not good. I don't love it. I hate everyone on the Patriots side of the ball. I'll play some Titans defense. And, Pollard, Spears, and Ridley all banged up too. So we don't even know who's going to be available for them. Ridley did catch 10 to 15 targets, 143 yards last week. It was a pretty good spot and game script against the Lions. But it was good to see him in the first game without Hopkins. So I don't know. Maybe you can play some Ridley if he's fine. But that's pretty much it for me other than the defense.
Yeah, one of my favorite things. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say both defenses because I don't trust Rudolph either.
Yeah, I like both defenses too. I'm with you on that 100%. There is somebody from Tennessee that I actually like a little bit. But what I was going to say was Brissett. One of my favorite bets for the first few weeks of the season was betting his under passing yards. It's not up yet because Drake May could still potentially play this game. If May gets ruled out, Brissett comes in at 180, take the under. Tennessee's pass defense is one of the best in the NFL. They don't want to. They're going to try to run the ball as much as they can in this game. So just out on New England, the defenses, like you mentioned. Tony Pollard is interesting here. New England's really struggled against the run this year. So, this is one of those spots where New England's 25th in run EPA. Pollard is the lead guy. He gets enough run. Spears is still banged up. It's unlikely that he comes back. He's still a hamstring, and he was limited again. So if Spears is out and Pollard's good to go, 6,800 under 7K running back against New England, getting a full workload, I can easily pair him with the Tennessee defense. Feel good about it. The only thing that concerns me is just how much clock is going to get run on this game because both teams are trying to run the ball. So I think you're really hoping Pollard gets at least 1 or 2 touchdowns here because I think he goes for 80 plus yards. It's just whether or not, does he get that touchdown? Does he get that second touchdown? Does he get the 100-yard bonus? But I think he's in a really good spot. And I love pairing running backs with defenses.
Yeah, if he's good to go, don't hate it. He's at the top 100 yards this year. He's at the top 20 fantasy points. Plays for the Titans, but good spot for sure.
Hey, listen, I'll take 18 at 68. I'll take that.
Pay $1 more grand for Kamara,
Yeah, listen, there's plenty of running backs. You don't have to be shy on running backs this week. So, all right, we got Denver at Baltimore, 45.5 total in this game. Baltimore a 9-point favorite. I think this is the most mispriced line on the weekend. It's part of the morning grind game later. We'll talk about it. I mean, my favorite quarterback play of the week is Bo Nix, 5,900. Like, dude, we've been doing it all year, right? Like, we've been playing all year. We've been playing quarterbacks against Baltimore. I mean, you look at what the Ravens have done this year: 320 to Cleveland in the air, 350 to Tampa, 250 to Washington, 370 to Cincy, 155 to Buffalo is Josh Allen's worst game. Dallas 360, Vegas with Minshew 230, Pat Mahomes 280. Like, what? Why are we not targeting this defense? One, they have a ton of injuries right now. We don't know if any of these guys, the corners, are going to play. And two, like, Sean Payton has opened up the playbook a little bit here for Bo Nix. He's thrown over 33 times in 2 of the last 3 games. They let him kind of air it out last week. 284 yards, his best game through the air, 3 touchdowns. He looked awesome against Carolina, and he gets another great matchup. And, like, he's a guy that can easily add, like, 40, 50 yards on the ground. Like, I like this guy way too much this week.
Yeah, I was ready to sell you on Bo Nix, so I don't have to do that. That's good. I also like him with Cortland Sutton, finally top 10 yards.
It's coming, man. We know it's coming.
Humphrey's hurt. Their rookie cornerback's hurt. So, I mean, and we talk about it every week. They're the best pass funnel in the NFL. Prior to last week, I haven't checked since, but they were first in yards allowed per game against the run, dead last in yards allowed per game against the pass. So, yeah, I'm with you. I want no part of the running game, but yeah, Bo Nix and Sutton, I like it.
Yeah, like you said, Sutton finally had that game. I mean, it took him long enough to get that, like, 100-yard game. Still didn't score a touchdown in that game. So, like, his upside is 30. I really do think, like, Cortland's upside is, like, 30 plus. I think that is his ceiling. I think that he'll eventually have one of these games. My other question for you, though, like, Trotman had a great role last week. Do you have any interest in that? Or are we just going Sutton here and just hoping that, like, Bo Nix is cheap enough, Sutton gets one of the touchdowns, and we kind of call it a day?
Dude, they have too many white tight ends, so you don't know which one you have. And one catches a touchdown, you have the other one. Can't do it.
Yeah, I mean, Vele and Humphrey, like, there's cheap options, but yeah, I mean, I think you just pair Bo Nix with Sutton. You hope Sutton catches that one touchdown, and you hope Nix runs one in on top of throwing like 2 or 3. So, I'm with you. I mean, I'm all in on Denver this weekend. I like it a lot. Question is, what are we doing with Baltimore? I mean, Lamar Jackson, he's dealing with, like, a back and a knee injury. I don't think it's going to be a problem, but Patrick Surtain shutting down Zay Flowers is a very possible thing here. We talk about Patrick Surtain. He's one of the best, if not the best, corner in football this year. Like, he's going to shadow Zay Flowers. Like, who benefits? I mean, does Johnson come in and benefit? Is it Bateman? Is this like the Mark Andrews game that he goes out and he scores another touchdown? Like, what are we doing with Baltimore in a game where I feel like it's going to be a competitive football game?
Yeah, I mean, on paper, you kind of want to avoid Denver's defense, right? But then you look at the team total. They have a team total of 27.5. So
yeah,
the betting market is not concerned whatsoever about the matchup. They're playing at home, coming off of a bad loss against the Browns. I think they just run all over Denver. I'm playing some Derrick Henry. If Deontay is active, I just don't think I want to trust any of these receivers. I mean, I didn't trust any of them before the trade, and now they're just another body in the mix. So I can play Lamar solo, but I prefer Josh Allen. And then I'll play some Henry because nobody ever plays him because he's expensive.
I will say, like, in Nick's Sutton stacks, I probably will take some shots on Andrews this week. Just because, like, I'm a full believer in Patrick Surtain being a shutdown corner. We talk a little bit about wide receiver cornerbacks way less than we did 5 years ago. But when you have a guy like Surtain, you just have to mention how good he is. So I'm out on Zay Flowers this week. If Johnson is inactive, I want to play some Bateman. I'll take some shots on Bateman this week. On, like, Nick stacks. Like,
was it Bateman that hit him in the face, that deep ball last week?
Oh, probably. I don't know. It wouldn't shock me, right? It wouldn't shock you.
It was bad.
Yeah.
I think it was Bateman, but
Dallas at Atlanta, 52 total in this game. Big total. Atlanta, a 2.5-point favorite. Let's go to Dallas first. We get one of our best quarterback matches we love to target. CeeDee Lamb has the opportunity to have a monster game this week. 31 targets over the last 2 games. They had a bye week, and they came back and they threw him the ball 17 times, 146 yards, 2 touchdowns. And they still lost. They still lost, but they finally were like, hey, we're just going to get CD the ball. I think that's a really good sign. He's really expensive. We do have some value this week. I think he's one of the top wide receiver plays on the entire slate. After him, though, it kind of becomes iffy. I think you could potentially take some shots on like Tolbert being cheap, but I really just want to play CD and hope I find the money for him and maybe a little bit of Jake Ferguson here.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. Don't really trust Dak right now. It has no rushing upside at this point in his career. Tolbert's only had 3 and 5 targets the last couple weeks, so kind of seems like it's just going to be CeeDee Lamb, and the backfield sounds like Rico Dowdle is going to be back from his illness. They signed Dalvin Cook, still have Zeke. I don't have a ton of interest outside of Lamb. You can maybe go to Ferguson, but he just hasn't been there. He hasn't got there this season, so it's kind of like we're chasing a dream there.
They did put Dalvin Cook back on the practice squad for whatever that's worth. If you're interested in any of that, the running game's a mess. Just play CD. I think that is the answer here. Just play CD against Terrell. Probably going to bet his wide receiver prop. I haven't looked at it yet, but this is a spot I definitely like CD a lot. Atlanta side, I think this is a great spot for Drake London to bounce back. Seems like it's going to be a high-scoring game. Kyle Pitts continues to do his thing. Like, he had 2 touchdowns last week on National Tight End Day. Kirk Cousins, we talked about him on the podcast. He threw 4 touchdowns again against Tampa. It's 8 touchdowns in 2 games against Tampa. What are we doing with Atlanta in this spot?
Yeah, so we think Carolina's run defense is bad, and the Cowboys are worse in terms of DFS grades, in terms of EPA against run. I haven't seen their DVOA number, but I imagine it's pretty bad. And they've allowed the 4th most fantasy points to running backs. So I love Bijan in the spot. He's looked really good the last few weeks. 7,400 is probably getting up there a little bit, but their team total is pretty massive. Then I'll go back to Drake London too. Probably don't want to pair him up with Cousins because we've seen a lot of like mediocre games from him. He's had 2 big games. Then he's had 6 of less than 18 fantasy points. So I'll probably just go with the rushing quarterbacks like Bo Nix and stuff. But London and Bijan, I'm on board.
Large field tournament stuff, like if you're playing 20 inch max or 150, you're playing the Millie Maker, like very top heavy tournaments. Do not be afraid to take some shots on Algier this week. He's 4,900. He's super cheap. It could potentially only need 10 rushing attempts here to score 1 or 2 touchdowns and run for 75 yards at 4,900. So he is someone that I wrote down that I wanted to bring up for top heavy large field tournaments. I love Bijan. I'm right there with you. But could Algier snipe 2 touchdowns for Bijan? Yes, he could. So
if I play Bijan, yes, the answer is yes.
Yeah, and you're playing him, so that's even better. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, I think Algier has some upside in this matchup. We talk about how bad Dallas can't speak is against the run, and he's 4,900, projecting for like 9 fantasy points. I think he's playable in large field stuff. Touchdown, and you're off to the races with a guy that's probably going to be like 3% owned.
Yeah, don't hate it. What are you doing with one Kyle Pitts?
I think you got to keep playing him. He like the Kirk Cousins connection with Kyle Pitts is finally getting there, and they're like using this guy. Like, hey, shocking. The guy with this amount of talent being used by a guy like Kirk Cousins doesn't shock me. Kirk Cousins has performed well with tight ends for years, depending on who he's had. So, I think at 4,900, it's the highest price he's been since week 3. There's some cheaper tight ends, but how can we really argue? He has at least 65 receiving yards in 4 straight games. The targets are there. The route run is there. The first look is there. They're getting him the football on purpose now. So I think you got to keep playing him.
All right. The problem is I haven't played him yet, and I don't want to hop on now,
Yeah, just play Bijan. I think that's the guy. Or like Drake London. I think I could see like Drake London having a big game, bounce back game here.
Yep.
We got Washington at New York facing the Giants, 43.5 total. Washington, a 3.5 point favorite. Let's go to the Washington side first. Jaden Daniels came back last week, or played, I should say. He kind of left the game early in week 7, played last week against Chicago. Hail Mary at the end of the game. the dude taunting the crowd. Like, what are you doing? Anyway, we still really haven't seen like Jaden Daniels like have like a 30+ point game. He's consistently good. I think it's just one of those spots where I probably end up just playing some Terry McLaurin.
Dude, I'm right there with you. You know, Jaden Daniels, the stat line looks pretty good, but he got like 300 bonus. He got the touchdown. He got an extra 50 yards on that Hail Mary play. And man, it worries me every time, he takes off to run. He's one or two hit away from, being on the sideline again, especially dealing with that rib injury. So kind of with you. And Giants defense isn't that bad. The team is bad, but the defense isn't that bad. So I actually have more interest in the Giants, which always scares me.
Yeah, I mean, Banks has been shadowing top end wide receivers, and like the only good game he's had this year was against McLaurin. So I mean, and that was week 2 before like we really started to see like Terry McLaurin and like become a very good staple in this offense. So I think that McLaurin's the answer. I mean, you could take some shots on Ertz, I think, if you wanted to. Coming off again, another 11 target game, double digits again, 4,300. He's just cheap. So like whenever I end up on like a cheaper tight end, he always kind of makes the builds for me. I like Mark Andrews at the same price range this week, but yeah, I mean, Zach Ertz always finds ways into my lineup. Malik Neighbors going to the Giants side leads the NFL among wide receivers and tight ends for first read percentage. You know how much I love that stat. I mean, they're getting him the football. I mean, they want to get him the football. And, I mean, he has double-digit targets in all but 2 games this year. What are we doing with the Giants here going up against Washington?
And not only double-digit targets, but he's at 18, 12, 15, and 13 targets in his last 5 games. So the dude just gets peppered. Yep. I know they are Daniel Jones targets, so maybe they're like worth 50% of a regular target. I'm not sure how that math equates, but, Daniel Jones, he's got some rushing upside. I don't mind pairing the two together. We know we can move the ball on Washington. They're at home. So I'll play some of those two. And then Tyrone Tracy, I think, is dealing with a concussion. He's in concussion protocol. So keep an eye on that. Probably won't play any Singletary, but let's see. 6,100. Yeah, don't really want to touch that, but probably going to play some Jones and Neighbors here.
Yeah, I mean, if Singletary was cheaper, I think I could maybe potentially get there. But yeah, I mean, I will say, like, if Tracy plays, he's been awesome. He looks really good. So you could potentially, and like, he is a guy, he was a former wide receiver, right? So like, he's a guy that could catch the ball in the backfield and has upside that way too. So if Tracy plays, I don't hate it, but it's Neighbors. I don't hate the idea of stacking him with Jones, running it back with maybe like a Terry McLaurin type build. Calling it a day. All right, moving on. We got Raiders, Bengals, 46.5 total in this one, and the Bengals a 7-point favorite. Anything that you're liking here for Las Vegas?
I don't know. We keep playing Brock Bowers, and I don't know. Gardner Minshew has other ideas, so I don't know what to do here. Jacoby Myers was pretty good last week. Minshew loves checking it down to Alexander Madison. Sounds like he's earned the starter role. They came out today and said that, but
yeah.
It's Las Vegas on the road. I don't know. Do you have any stronger takes and idea?
I mean, I don't hate the idea of playing a little bit of Madison. He's 5,700, and like I think DraftKings only. I don't think he's a FanDuel player. I want the full point PPR. I mean, I could see him getting 5 to 7 catches. Yeah, I mean, if Myers plays, I hated what we saw last week against Kansas City for Bowers. Like, he had the best matchup on the board for tight ends, and he only got 5 targets, and he caught all 5 of them and had another really good game, 58 yards on 5 catches. Like, I think, like, floor-wise, ceiling-wise, he's probably one of the best. I think his upside is a little hurt with Myers being back, but, I mean, Myers is cheap at 5,300. I think the Raiders are going to be trailing in this game, so, like, I don't hate the idea of taking some shots here on Madison, Myers, and Bowers. Not playing Minshew, but he is really cheap. He's 4.5K. We talked about Bryce Young being really cheap. There's a lot of pay up options. We haven't talked about Barkley, but we talked about CeeDee Lamb. We talked about Bijan. There's a lot of pay up options. I can see myself using a guy like Minshew and just trying to be different, So I think I prefer Bryce Young, and I literally threw up in my mouth as I said it. But yeah, let's go to the Cincinnati side. Man, T. Higgins not practicing again, dealing with an injury. We'll see if he's back or not. If he's out, Jamar Chase, obviously against the Raiders, becomes a great option. I think we take some shots on our boy Chase Brown this week. I think he has a lot of upside against the Raiders, but I don't love this game. I thought I'd love this game a lot more. 7-point home favorite for Cincinnati, but like struggling just to get a lot of like thought process on this game.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. Chase Brown, probably my favorite play here. He's played on 56% of the snaps the last 3 games. We've seen Zach Moss struggle a little bit, and it's a good spot. I mean, at home against a bad defense. We've seen a lot of running backs get there against the Raiders. But yeah, for whatever reason, Jamar Chase just struggles whenever T. Higgins is out of the lineup. The splits are pretty bad. I don't know if teams are just doubling him, bracketing him. But even if the Raiders do that, I don't think they can slow down Chase. So I'll probably play some Chase. He's 8,600. That is a lot. But yeah, I'm kind of with you. I think the Bengals will have a lot of success. I just don't feel great about any of their plays at the price points.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it could potentially be really spread out too. I don't know.
You know who I don't love is Yoshi Boss. Just nothing.
Nothing. All right, we got Chargers and Browns, 43 total. Chargers a 2-point favorite going into Cleveland. Cleveland coming off a big win. They announced this week that Jameis Winston will start moving forward. And I think, personally, I think it's the right call. I mean, we've kind of been saying it all year off and on. I mean, I don't want to like talk bad about DTR. I just think Winston has a better upside or better chance to win football games, and he's a better fantasy player. But anyway, Chargers side here. I mean, Cleveland's defense pretty solid. I like the Cleveland defense side. I like the Chargers defense side. I'm like struggling to find pieces to play on the Chargers. Is there anything that I'm missing here?
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. I mean, not only is Jameis Winston the better quarterback, but think of all the impressions the Browns are getting from his interviews, man. Those are just going, every single one is going viral. The dude's always got something interesting to say. I don't want to play him this week against the Chargers, but and Cedric Tillman's still pretty cheap. Kind of seems like he's the wide receiver one there now that Amari Cooper's gone. Njoku, kind of a nice couple weeks. He's got a touchdown each of the last 2 games with Winston. So I'll play a little bit of them, but probably don't want to stack it. And then the Chargers side, just wait to see on Quentin Johnston. I think a lot of people go back to Ladd McConkey. He did have that long touchdown. It was kind of a broken play, but he's been pretty good. He's really good at those contested catches. So he might be somebody we might need to have some interest in.
Yeah, I mean, I like McConkey. I like Disley. I think those are 2 guys you could potentially take some shots on. I think the Browns' run defense is one of the best run defenses in the NFL, for what it's worth. I mean, Pro Football Focus has them number 1 in run defense grades. I think it's a tough spot for Dobbins. He's 7K. We have a ton of running back options today or this week. So probably going to pass on playing a lot of him if I play any of him. And yeah, I mean, McConkey and Disley, I think those are the 2, Njoku and Tillman. I mean, I want to play the pass catchers, the cheaper pass catchers here. I think Tillman's just too cheap for his role. Talked about him being my favorite play last week. And I mean, he couldn't get the 1 extra yard. I mean, what the heck? I'm really not complaining about 28 fantasy points, by the way. I'm just kidding. We got Chicago at Arizona, 44.5 total in this one. Arizona 1-point favorite. Let's go to the Bears first. What do we like here for Chicago?
Speaking of guys that couldn't get 1 extra yard, they couldn't give DeAndre Swift a touchdown there at the end of the game. They had to give it to Roschon Johnson.
What the heck, man?
Really needed that. I ended up pivoted to him in the afternoon because I needed to make up some points, and then bubbled in that lineup, so wasn't too happy about that. But yeah, I like Swift here again. He just continues to get a bunch of work. He's had at least 20 fantasy points in 4 straight games, and he's doing it through the air. He's doing it on the ground. So I like him in this spot. I keep wanting to play DJ Moore, and just it never works. I don't know. Do you have any strong take on these receivers? I don't really want to play Caleb here at 6,100.
Yeah, I mean, the route run and first read percentage is all over the place here between Moore, Allen, and Odunze. I think if you're playing a pass catcher, it's Swift. I mean, like all joking aside, I really like DeAndre Swift. I think if you're going to take shots here, you potentially play Caleb Williams naked or with DeAndre Swift and try to hope that like they score 4 touchdowns combined type of play. And I could see like 3 passing touchdowns from Caleb Williams to like 3 different people. Don't hate Cole Kmet in large field tournaments if you want to take shots, but I mean, he's coming off a game where he had 1 target, 1 catch for 14 yards. So really hard to get excited about playing him, but I mean, he's having a really solid up and down type season. So, yeah, I mean, who do you play? I mean, you can't really trust any of these guys. Like, you want to play DJ Moore, you want to play Keenan Allen, but Caleb Williams looks like a 7-8 year old, like a 7-8 year veteran hitting who's ever open. I mean, like, you don't know. Like, they're not forcing the ball.
And I don't want to play Keenan Allen or DJ Moore. I don't want to play him. So.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I want to play DeAndre Swift. I like.
You just want to keep playing Swift.
Yeah, I mean, the advanced stats were early on DeAndre Swift. I mean, it all made sense. It was just like it was eventually going to happen. He's had some great matchups too. Like, think about it. He had the Rams, Carolina, and Jacksonville in 3 of the last 4 games. So. Best way to get your season on track is to go through those 3 defenses. Arizona side, listen, I came on here last week and I was like, man, I really don't want to play Marvin Harrison against this tough Dolphins defense. He's incredible. I mean, watching him play, like, he's just so good. The Arizona is so easy for me. Like, maybe a little bit of shots on Murray, but it's Connor, Harrison, and McBride. Like, you can play those 3 guys and feel really good about getting your exposure to Arizona on every slate.
And nobody ever plays anyone from Arizona. Right now we have Marvin Harrison at 2%, McBride under 10%, Connor 11%. So you can always get these guys in lower ownership. The matchup isn't great on paper, but indoors at home, I think kind of agree with you. They're not probably going to make any of my main lineups, but large field stuff. Love the Harrison call.
Yeah, I mean, Kyler Murray, 6,600, really fair mid-range quarterback play. You know, he hasn't had that like super ceiling game, but I mean, he's gone over 25 fantasy points 3 times this year. So, I mean, 25 at 66 is a really solid day for a quarterback. So, I don't hate him here. Up next, we got Rams and we got Jags and Eagles. I forgot they switched this game around to the Sunday Night Football swap. 45.5 total here. The Eagles a 7.5 point favorite. Jags side here going up against Philadelphia. I mean, it sounds like Thomas is not going to play. Christian Kirk is out. Davis is banged up. Really tough defensive matchup for these guys, like against Philly's secondary. Like, Bigsby's banged up. ETN's banged up. Like, what are we doing with the Jags here?
Yeah, we saw Parker Washington play well in this role when he got more work last year. So maybe we can go to him. Caught 3 of his 4 targets last week for 46 yards. I mean, if Thomas is active, I think he's still playing. Done with the chest injury, but limited practice on Wednesday. I don't really feel great about anybody else. I mean, Trevor Lawrence finally looked decent last week, put up 28 fantasy points against the Packers. Pretty good spot against a beatable secondary, the Eagles, but they do have a really good pass rush. So might just be Eagles D with Saquon. And I'm guessing you're leaning that way too.
It's kind of where I'm at. Yeah, I mean, if you look at the first few games of the year for the Eagles, they really struggled against wide receivers, but over the last 5 weeks, they've allowed the 10th fewest fantasy points to wide receivers. So it's really hard for me to get excited about playing any Jacksonville players here. And Saquon should run for 150 yards against this defense. I mean, and I'm not even I feel like I'm underestimating it. So I like Saquon. I like Philadelphia's defense. I mean, if I'm not playing Philly's defense and Thomas sits, Washington's 3,600. Evan Ingram is 5,300. They're going to be trailing. I'll take a few shots on those guys. But yeah, I mean, that's really it for me on the Jag side. And on the Philadelphia side, love Saquon. If this game was going to stay closer, I could see maybe paying up for A.J. Brown, but I don't see how I could pay up for A.J. Brown over CeeDee Lamb this week. I mean, that's kind of where my head's at on paying up for wide receiver.
Yeah, kind of with you. He's always viable, but yeah, CeeDee Lamb's probably got the higher floor. But, I mean, you're going to get A.J. Brown at much lower ownership, and this is all-time bad pass defense. So
Yeah.
I could see him breaking the slate. So large field stuff. I like AJ Brown, like Saquon. It hurts, man. He's going to get all the tush pushes. 35 fantasy points last week, only threw for 230 yards.
He was on my best team. That was my best team. It was a Jalen Hurts team.
He was the only quarterback I had tagged, and I thought I was in the money. And then Bo Nix went nuts. Anyway. Yeah, I think it's a great spot for the Eagles. Just a matter if Jacksonville can provide any pushback for us.
It's funny because we were both in that same boat. We were both hoping for Javonte Williams last week, and he didn't get it going. Rams and Seahawks, 48 total in this game. Rams a 2-point favorite. We saw Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp back for the Rams. That's huge for them. What do we like here for the Rams going into Seattle?
Yeah, I mean, they said they weren't going to play Puka Nacua much. Ended up playing a bunch of snaps. Looks like he's going to be pretty popular. I don't know. Now that there's so many mouths to feed, I just don't feel great about it as a divisional game on the road. Seattle's been pretty good defensively at home, other than last week against Buffalo. So, I don't know. I don't feel great. I'd rather have Kamara than Karen Williams. And I just never know if I should play Puka or Kupp. So, I probably won't have a bunch of exposure to the Rams. What about you?
I think it's Williams. I mean, again, we have a ton of great running back plays this week. I mean, it just seems like we're talking about running backs for every game, and I think both running backs on both sides of this game are great plays too. I mean, I can see myself feeling really good about my running back exposure this week, but yeah, I mean, Puka Nacua, 35% first read rate last week, 37% of the air yards. Cooper Kupp, 5 catches, 30% first read. Those are the two guys. I mean, and it's a coin flip, and it's been a coin flip ever since Puka Nacua was drafted. I prefer Puka Nacua if I was going to play one of these two guys. I think he has a higher ceiling, so I prefer him. I like Williams. I like Puka Nacua. I really like Walker on the other side of this game. I mean, you know he's coming off a really tough game against Buffalo, but I think this is an excellent bounce back spot. We've been targeting running backs against the Rams all year. Not going to really stop now. 28th in run EPA, 10th in rushing yards allowed per game. Man, like another fantastic running back spot on a slate where it might be a 3 running back week. Like I don't typically play running backs in the flex, but it might be a 3 running back week for me.
Yeah, the dude seems to get there every week. Didn't play great last week against Buffalo, but the whole team just struggled to move the ball. So I think it's a great bounce back spot for Kenneth Walker. We'll wait and see. Did you say if DK Metcalf's going to be back?
I think he was limited. No, he did not practice Wednesday, but they said that they were optimistic that he would return to practice on Thursday. So I assume that is good news. Lockett is also dealing with an oblique injury, so we'll pay attention to both of these guys because I know you're about to talk about Geno, and I couldn't agree with you more about Geno at his price this week going up against the Rams.
I mean, Rams 27th in PFF pass grades, haven't been much better in EPA, so I think it's a good spot for pretty much everyone on the Seahawks. And if Metcalf's back, I'll definitely go back to him in tournaments.
Yeah, and if he's out and Lockett's out, I mean, JSN is probably a cash game or main lineup play. I don't play cash games, but I play main lineup. And then Bobo would probably become like a really solid value play if both of those guys end up sitting at 3,400. So a lot of news to pay attention to on the Seattle side. Noah Fant's banged up right now, too. He's dealing with like a groin injury. We could see like AJ Barner become, and I think you'd just see him block a little bit more than anything, and they would probably run more 3 wide receiver sets. So pay attention to that Seattle wide receiver news. But I mean, Walker is in a great spot. Geno's not projecting for a ton of ownership, so it could be a good situation to take advantage of. Finish out the DK main slate with Detroit at Green Bay, 48.5 total. Detroit a 3.5-point favorite. We'll be paying attention to the Jordan Love news. They said today that like it's really like there's a potential that he plays this week, and I thought that was crazy. David Montgomery. We'll start with the Detroit side. just keep scoring touchdowns. We saw the first look without Williams playing, and I mean, what are we doing with Detroit in this one?
I think my favorite play is going to be Amon-Ra St. Brown. You mentioned J-Mo is going to be out. Amon-Ra didn't really get there last week, kind of been squeaky.
Didn't have to. I mean, they
didn't have to. They had like 50 real quick. So I don't know. I mean, Montgomery keeps scoring, but he just doesn't have a ton of upside because he doesn't do a lot in the passing game. And you still have Gibbs there, still in a lot of work. Gibbs has been 33 and 23 fantasy points the last 2 weeks.
Gibbs had a great game too.
So, I mean, they're Lions. They're going to move the ball. They're going to score. I think it's a Amon-Ra week, but I wouldn't blame anybody for playing these running backs.
I think you could take some shots on Laporta too. We saw him get way more involved with Williams out last week. So I like Laporta. He's under 5K. This should be a great football game. If this game was in Detroit, I would assume the total is like 52, and we'd be stacking this every different way. I really want Jordan Love to play in this game for what it's worth. I think the game has a much better chance to stay competitive if Jordan Love's in there. But yeah, I mean, St. Brown, I think, is a great call. I'm right there with you on him. Laporta, this is one of my favorite game stacks. I think you could take some shots on Jordan Love and Jared Goff. I think probably more Jordan Love if he plays, but we'll have to see. Jordan Love was one of my favorite bets last week and got hurt, and that sucked. What are we doing with Green Bay going up against Detroit here?
I don't know. I don't want to play any of the receivers. I keep playing Jaden Reed, and he's averaging 10 fantasy points outside of 2 games this season. He's had 2 big games, and the rest have been pretty bad. Dobbs has been decent the last 3 weeks, but all these guys are expensive. So I don't have a strong take. I mean, Josh Jacobs has been pretty good the last couple of games, but Detroit's run defense is pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, I said it last week. I'll say it again. I think Dobbs is my favorite. I mean, air yards wise, I think that this is one of those spots you could take shots on. So I don't mind Dobbs. Kraft, I mean, he scored a touchdown again last week. It was late in the game. Better tight end plays. And the running back situation in this game as a whole, I don't mind Gibbs, but I mean, how do I play these running backs over all the running back plays that we've talked about so far? Is kind of where I'm at. So yeah, Josh Jacobs coming off a great game, but it was Jacksonville, man. So
yeah.
I feel like you could put on some pads and run well against Jacksonville, so
might get hurt the first play, but that one play I'd get 6 or 7 yards.
Yeah. 2 yards after the first touch, you'll be fine. All right, we finish out the breakdown with the Colts and the Vikings. This is on FanDuel, or if you're playing Showdown on DraftKings. 46.5 total in this game. Minnesota 5-point favorite. Joe Flacco getting the start. I know you're with me when I'm going to say good. I mean, this upside or this wide receiver core has so much more upside with Flacco. I mean, the Vikings have been giving up a ton of fantasy points all year with against wide receivers. Michael Pittman's 5,800 on FanDuel this week. I think he makes my main lineup, Noto. How do we not like Pittman against this secondary under 6K with Flacco at quarterback?
I was just going to ask if our lineups page had the salary wrong, because 5,800 just seems really bad. Last week we had Dalton Kincaid at 4K. That's not this bad, but Pittman at 5,800 with Flacco. Sign me up for that. Vikings dead last in fantasy points allowed to wide receivers this season. It's a game where they're probably going to be trailing. So love him. Don't mind taking some shots on downs. I don't know what to do with Taylor. 8,200 doesn't seem that bad of a price over on FanDuel, so you can probably play some in too.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely prefer the pass catchers just because they're so much cheaper. Downs is 6,900. He's expensive, but I mean, Pittman is so cheap, and I don't even hate the idea of getting some Josh Downs on FanDuel just because of how much Joe Flacco targeted him. I don't know if I play Flacco at 7K just because you look at the quarterbacks in that range. You got Bo Nix, you got Caleb Williams. I don't know if I get to him over those guys. Daniel Jones is 66, Minshew 66, Bryce Young 65. I think I would prefer Flacco over Daniel Jones and Minshew. I mean, overall, I think that Pittman is the main target for me from the Colts. Like you said, I don't mind Taylor. He's capable of like 2 touchdown games, and then I'll mix in a little bit of Josh Downs. But I really don't mind Alec Pierce in this game either. He's really cheap at 52. Minnesota's gotten destroyed on the outside, and Pierce and Pittman are the outside guys, where Downs is more of a slot guy. So, yeah, I mean, fire up these guys, and then go to the other side and fire up some Aaron Jones and some Justin Jefferson. I mean, here we go. Like, this is a really, really interesting Sunday night hammer. Like you said, would have probably preferred it on the main slate, but I mean, FanDuel main slate and Aaron Jones 7,500 against one of the league's worst running defenses. He's getting a ton of carries. Jefferson is just a beast. Like, Jefferson or CeeDee Lamb, I think, is kind of the conversation to have this week. I mean, they're right at the same price point. I think both of these guys have very similar upside. You know, you could also throw in like Amon-Ra St. Brown in that conversation, but I think you're going to try to get one of these top end wide receivers this week.
Yeah, for sure. And it's almost like FanDuel is kind of enticing us to play the late game with some of these price points. Jones is way too cheap for the matchup. And I mean, Jefferson is pretty expensive, but I still like him. I probably prefer Lamb on DraftKings. I guess he's the only available option on DraftKings, but I probably might go Jefferson on FanDuel for that late hammer.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? You might be able to play both of them. There's a lot of value on FanDuel this week again. So the Jefferson Pittman combo just looks really good when you're thinking about how to make up ground on Sunday night. Like, so. Any final thoughts before we move on to the morning grind game?
Nah, let's get to it, man.
All right, yeah, fun. I like the slate, man. I think this is a good, bounce back for both of us. Our main lineups didn't do as well as we had hoped last week, so good bounce back. Let's see what Bo Nix can do for us. Quarterback for 300 plus passing yards. Who do you got?
This one's kind of tough because I like, a lot of rushing quarterbacks this week. But I'm going to go Matt Stafford. I think with his 2 best weapons back, I think he can get there against Seattle.
I like that. Man, this one is like, I wrote this down and I think I'm just going to go with it. I like Goff, but I'm going to go Dak Prescott throws 300 plus yards this week. I think this can be a high. Like, that's one of my favorite game stacks this week is the Dallas Atlanta game. So I like Dak, CD, Bijan stacks. And I mean, if I'm going to stack it, I might as well just stick with it. So low owned running back for a touchdown. We record on Wednesday. There's going to be ownership changes. Who do you think could be low owned that scores a touchdown this week?
Like, I don't think this guy's going to be low owned, but right now we have him 11%. So I'm going to take it, and I'm going to go with Achane against Bills. Had a big game against them earlier this season. Looked good last week.
Yeah, so he's projected for like 5%. Like 5% on FanDuel. I was shocked by that when I was looking at it earlier, but I like Achane as well. I think that's a great call. I'm going to go to Walker. He's projected for 8% right now. Kenneth Walker doesn't typically get a ton of ownership, so I don't know if it like gets higher than like 15%. So I think Kenneth Walker is a really strong play this week. Your boy Derrick Henry is not projecting for any ownership, and Saquon's not projecting for any ownership, but there's no way that's not going to change. That's not going to change.
It's like the $8,000 price point on DraftKings is just like a mental hurdle for people. Once the running back gets over that, nobody wants to play him.
Yeah, no chance though for Saquon. Maybe I'm wrong.
I don't know.
Quarterback, wide receiver, stack for a touchdown. Who do you got?
I'm going to go DK Metcalf in hopes that he suits up this week against the Rams. So Geno to DK.
I like it. I'm going to go to my boy, Bo Nix, hitting our boy, Cortland Sutton for a touchdown this week. I'm going to play it a ton, so I'm just hoping I'm willing it into action here is what I'm hoping for. Wide receiver for 8+ targets. Who do you got?
Do you just take the free square and go Malik Neighbors? Is that not exciting enough?
I feel like I have the other free square then. That's fine with me.
All right. He might get double that.
I'm going to go CD. Yeah, like what did I say? I think it was like 31 targets over the last 2 games. My low key one though, that's not projecting for a ton of ownership was DK Metcalf, and you mentioned him in the question before this. So there you go. All right, tight end for a touchdown.
Let's go. Haven't played this guy all year, but he's been better. Let's go Kyle Pitts.
Oh gosh. All right. Note to self. I'm gonna go Mark Andrews for a touchdown this week. Let's see if he can make it 4 weeks in a row. I talked about Zay Flowers having a really tough matchup. I could see Lamar rushing for like 80 yards this week, and just having one of those types of games. So definitely want to play some Lamar. Probably play some Lamar Andrews stacks with Cortland Sutton and vice versa with Bo Nix and Sutton and Andrews. So defense for 10 plus points. Who do you got?
Give me the Eagles. I like picking against my team, and pretty big favorites at home. Good pass rush. Going up against Trevor Lawrence.
I like it. I'm going to go Tennessee. I like Titans this week. I don't really care who plays quarterback, whether it be Brissett or May. All right, betting portion of the show, against the spread or money line bet, anything that you like this week?
I'm going to go the New York Giants plus 3.5 at home. Divisional game. I wasn't all that impressed with Washington last week. And I think New York's defense is going to show up in this one.
All right, I like it. I talked about this one. I was really quickly pulling up the Hard Rock app to see if it changed. It hasn't changed. Give me Denver plus 9. I know like Baltimore just got beat last week by Cleveland, yada, yada, yada. I think 9's just too much for what we've seen out of this past defense this year. So I'm not going to do anything crazy like take the money line or anything, but give me Denver plus 9 to cover against Baltimore. I think Baltimore ends up winning the game, but I think Denver covers. Over under bet.
I'm going to go under on the Patriots and Titans. It's a 38 right now.
I took the same thing. Yeah.
I don't think they can get there.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Again, I don't care who plays quarterback or not. Under 38 points, just, yeah, I mean, no. How do you not like that line? So I'm right there with you. I was looking really quickly to see if there's anything. Maybe Detroit Green Bay over 48 would be one that I don't hate if you want to take that line. But I'm gonna double down with Noto here and say New England under 38. Player prop or pick 'em play. Anything? Didn't have a ton of stuff out, but it's starting to roll out some stuff here. Is there anything here?
Yes, I'm gonna go Cortland Sutton over 51.5 yards. Feels way too easy.
Yeah. I mean, I'm with this quarterback. I have this halfway written up for scores and odds, and it'll be up probably after the show. But Bo Nix, I was waiting all week. I was just like, what are we going to get? 213.5 for Bo Nix this week. I'm going to take the over on that. Again, coming off his best game of the year against Carolina. Love this spot, man. We talk about how much of a pass funnel this defense is. I really like Bo Nix to hit the over on 213.5. So, hey, single game parlay, right? Let's just single game parlay it. We won't do a 3-pick parlay morning grind game this week. We're just going to single game parlay Bo Nix and Cortland Sutton. There you go.
Okay, do it.
I'm in. I'm putting it in right now. So, Derek, any final thoughts before we get out of here?
I just want to say thanks to everybody that's listening. Been a long week here at RotoGrinders, but we're still at it, and we still appreciate everybody that listens and enjoys our content on a weekly basis.
Yeah, if you enjoy it, hit the like button, subscribe, and give us some love over there on Twitter. We appreciate it. If you ever, like I say this all the time, if you ever have any questions later in the week, always feel free to hit me up on Twitter. I try to reply to people as much as possible. So if you ever run into those kind of questions, feel free to hit me up over there. Appreciate everyone hanging out. Derek, always appreciate doing the show with you. We're back next Wednesday night, Thursday podcast, talking week 10 already. Week 10 crazy. Have a good one, everyone. We'll see you then.